If you have studied French before, you know that French verbs can be scary and intimidating. For every single verb, there is a full conjugation chart featuring 20 tenses across 4 moods, full of endings that are always different for some reason and sprinkled with silent letters. How can anyone make sense of it? Well, it took me 20 years of teaching French, but I have now combined all of the hacks that make verbs ridiculously easy to learn, and also how you can avoid having to learn them at all and still speak French fluently. I have compiled them in a free guide called French Verbs 80-20, which I will link below. And in this video, I will share the most impactful shortcuts that you can use to speak French faster and with good grammar. The 80-20 of the 80-20, if you will. It turns out that shortcuts hide in plain sight and even masquerade as difficulties. As a French coach, it's my job to show you how you can harness them and turn the difficulties into assets. So without further ado, I will start with something that you probably aren't expecting. If you are trying to learn by reading, silent letters can be your worst nightmare. I put them in gray for my students so they know to ignore them. Silent letters include the unaccented E, the final consonants, and the plural ENT mark. This means that 95% of French verbs end with a silent letter or 3. And because that last letter is often the only thing that makes a form different from another, this means that you can actually learn one form instead of 3 or 4. Silent letters only become a challenge if you are writing to someone who would be offended by poor spelling. Until then, they are your best friend. Aimer in present goes from 6 forms to just aime. J'aime, tu aimes, il aime, elle aime, on aime, il or elle aime. And this works for most verbs. That is if you ignore the nous and vous forms. And why should we ignore them? Well, vous is quite rare. How often do you address several people at once or one person which you absolutely have to speak to formally? As for nous, it is totally outdated, which takes me to my second shortcut. Use on. If your French teachers made you learn the nous form, I'm sorry. No one uses it in regular speech nowadays. Fun fact, 60 years ago, French teachers were trying to force my generation to stop using on by saying on est un imbécile. Well, the imbecile has now won, and I cannot remember the last time I've used nous while speaking to fellow French people. We say on va faire ça over nous allons faire ça every single time. This is great news for you because while the nous form is always different, the on form is always the same as the il and elle form, that is to say the one I mentioned in shortcut 1. By the way, all of this information and much more is in my free guide, French Verbs 80-20, so I'll put the link in the description box below for you. And I also have an upcoming series of short videos about individual verbs where I show you how to pronounce it all. And I will put all of those in a playlist and I'll link it up here when they are released. But how far can you get once you know how to use on and ignore silent letters if you haven't memorized all of the verbs you need? Turns out, pretty far, thanks to shortcut 3. Use several verbs in a row. Whenever my students are struggling, I tell them to use shorter sentences. I call this the universal hack because a longer sentence is more opportunities for grammar to trip you up. More sentences and shorter sentences are what makes fluency possible. But every rule has an exception, and so does this one. Well, actually, not every rule has an exception because here is one that doesn't. In French, if you have 2 verbs in a row, the second one is always in the infinitive, that is to say the form that you find in the dictionary. No conjugation required. The only conjugation you need is that of the first verb. And what difference does that make? Well, as the first verb, you should choose one of the following 4 verbs. I call them fluency unlocking verbs. The first 2 are pouvoir and vouloir, or in their most used present form, peut and veut. They can help you to express most things in the present. Things you already can do and things you want to do. Instead of saying, I learn French, with the pesky verb apprendre and its conjugation you might not remember, say, I can learn French. Je peux apprendre le français. And the other 2 are even more useful because they unlock the past and the future. Venir de and its most common form, vient de, lets you say what just happened. Je viens d'apprendre un raccourci utile. Aller lets you talk about what will happen soon. You will have to learn a couple forms for this one, but I'm putting together a short video to help. Vous allez parler français bientôt. You are going to speak French soon. I have more tips later for you in this video, but if you don't master these 4 shortcuts yet, I do recommend you practice them until they become second nature when you try to speak French. Most students and teachers put too much focus in cramming more information into the student's head and not enough into practicing one element at a time to actually build fluency. Obviously, I can't make you practice on YouTube, but I can on Zoom. I have a few spots available, so I will put all of the information and the links in the description for you when you're ready. I always focus on meeting you where you're at and teaching you what will have the most impact for you next. For example, Once you have mastered these 4 shortcuts, I will definitely recommend the 5th one. Learn verb types. Sometimes it can seem that every verb is different and conjugates only to its own beat, but that's not true. Each verb has a type, and when you progress in your learning, every new verb you learn will conjugate like one you already know. For example, apprendre and comprendre will conjugate like prendre. So you don't need to learn their conjugation, you only need to identify the type when you learn the new verb. This is why I have included only 9 verbs into my free guide. In truth, that gives you access to most French verbs if you only know their type. You can use a Becherel to find the types, and I have showed you how in that video. Or, if this is too overwhelming, you can check my upcoming playlist for the 80-20 of each key verb. And if all else fails, make shorter sentences. That is still my #1 advice, with the exception of the 2 verbs in a row. The longer your sentence is, the more likely it is that the beginning of the sentence will impose complex grammar rule onto the rest. Things like subjunctif and concordance des temps, which really aren't for the faint of hearts, and should only be approached by experienced students who can already have a basic conversation using the shortcuts. You can eliminate 80% of the difficulties if you stick to the shortcuts, maybe 90-95% actually. In fact, let me know if you'd like me to make a video about all of the verb things that you definitely shouldn't learn. Something like top 10 best ways to get overwhelmed and waste your time with French verbs. As a rule of thumb, if it's not in the 80-20 guide and your French is not yet conversational, don't bother. Your time is better spent on what's in this guide. Once you become able to express yourself in French with this shortcut, and you grow fed up of only expressing what just happened and what will happen very soon, your next milestone will be to learn how to speak with the actual past tenses. It's in the 80-20 guide too, and it will be the topic of my next video. I'll put it there when it's out. And if you're not ready to learn complex tenses and you want more shortcuts to improve your fluency right now, you can steal them from Anthony Blinken in this video.